Eleanor Beaton. Oh, I am so excited to welcome you to the Move to Millions podcast. How are you today?
I am awesome. I'm so honored to be here. Let's do it.
I've been waiting for this. Like that I'm very hairy, so the hairs on my arms are standing on end at just how amazing and juicy this conversation is going to be. And we have no idea what we're going to talk about. So before
No
we
clue.
jump in, why don't we just start? Tell everybody who you are in your own words.
I'm Eleanor. I'm a mom of two teenage boys. I am a wife to Leon for 22 years. I am a really determined, competitive woman with a big vision and a big mission to double the number of women founders who sustainably scale past a million by 2030. Um, I have a company called SafiMedia. And through that company really is the sort of vehicle through which I see the biggest part of that vision being realized, through our coaching programs, through the education programs that we do, and also through sort of enacting the incredible team that I've built to help, really work with, train, mentor, support women entrepreneurs in particular. So lots of different things in there. But, I think at my essence, I am a woman who really believes that in clarifying our vision and fulfilling a potential and like the pursuit of our potential is one of the best ways that we can honor God, that we can honor, our time here on earth.
I love all of that. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm taking notes. Regular listeners know I got my pen and paper out because I'm always digging into the words in between the words, right? And so there's so much I want to unpack. I loved when you shared that you're a really determined and competitive woman on a mission to double the number of women who, I put this in all caps, sustainably scale $1 million businesses. So like that is what makes us sisters from another mister. So we're definitely gonna come
Right.
back and talk about that. I loved the homage to your team. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I think a lot of times when you've built a seven-figure business, because we live in the age of social media, people think it's easy. Like they don't really have to do anything and that they themselves can be the only person making seven figures. And while that is technically true, it is never advisable, right? So we're going to talk about the role that team plays. But this last thing you said, we're going to plant our stake in the ground here for a few minutes. You said, I believe that clarity of vision and fulfilling your potential and pursuing filling your potential is the way that you honor God. Oh, okay. I just want to stop right there. Like, where did that come from? When did it sit in your spirit? Like I spent a lot of time, Eleanor, sitting in the significance of
Mm.
the things that drop in my spirit. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about the show and how it is literally just a download. Like I get a thought, I sit with it, and then I go and I record with no script, right? And so I imagine as I play the words in my mind, pursuing your potential is the way that you honor God. I know what that feels to me, but I want to know what is that to you?
Well, when I was a little girl, I lived on the top of this mountain with my family. We lived in this little wooden house. It would shake when the cold winter winds would blow. We had this fantastic view of what's called the Minas Basin, which is like this bay that has the highest tides in the world.
Mhm,
And I spent a lot of my time just kind of wandering around in the woods. It was a very rural environment.
mhm.
But I always felt closest to God when I was in nature. And it was because there was this sense of wonder, and to me, that's one of the highest experiences you can have as a human is the experience or the feeling of wonder. And the interesting thing is that it's available all the time.
Mhm.
But where I most see it is like in simple kindnesses, in the majesty of the natural world. But I also see it we just had the Olympics,
Mhm.
when you see people fulfilling, like winning years of work and dedication, and they're able to accomplish these extraordinary feats. And the universe, like the world, is often glued to the Olympics and that kind of achievement, I think because it is wondrous.
Mm.
And that sense of wonder, whenever I experience it, I always know that I am close to the plan for me. I am close to my mission, to my vision, and I'm connected into a higher power, which we just talked about, which we call God.
Mhm.
And um, when I fulfill my potential, that energy and the feeling of being in that and doing that work feels like wonder a lot of times. Like, we know when you're journaling and you're thinking about what's possible and you're writing that down, and maybe you look back at a journal from a few years ago and you surprise yourself when you see how far you've come. To
Yeah.
me, it's always the sense of wonder. And to me, being in wonder is being close to God.
I love that. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. My whole body is one big fat goose pimple right now. Because I agree with you. For me, it's nature, but it's not necessarily the woods. It's the
Yeah.
water, right?
Right.
Whenever I travel, if I'm going to a resort that is on the water, near the water, I
Yeah.
have to be ocean front, like not even
Yeah.
ocean view. I need to be able to hear the wonder of God.
Yeah.
And there's something magical, for lack of a better word, in this moment that I know I feel steeped in my spirit when I am out, as you said, feeling the wonder and just exploring his creation.
Yeah.
Eleanor, I remember I don't know how old I was, but 2010 was the year that I first went abroad. Now, I don't know how much you remember about my background, but I was born to drug addicted, turned crack addicted parents, projects of Wilmington, Delaware. I still live in Delaware. I do ask myself all the time, why do I still live here? Because I'm so much bigger than Delaware, but I do still live here. I never even went to Disney World until I was 20 years old, 22. My family never took me anywhere. Never saw anything, right? And in 2010 was the first time I went abroad, and I went to Italy. And actually, that's not true. It wasn't 2010. It was earlier than that. But anyway, let me just tell the
Yeah.
story. First time I ever went to Italy, and we were in the Tuscan region, and we went to this town called San Gimignano. And in San Gimignano, it was like, do you remember the movie The Sound of Music?
Yes.
When they're like up in the hills of Austria, wherever
Only
they were.
watched it 50 times.
I mean,
Yes.
like, listen, I love it. I mean, I could sing all the songs with you right now. So I'm in San Gimignano. We're staying at this beautiful bed and breakfast, and I just look out at the wonders of God. And that's why I'm like, I'm planted here, because I think that you have encapsulated so very well what it feels like to recognize that there is a power that is greater than us. And when we tap into the potential that that power, again, we call him God, that we understand he has created and given us liberally to
Mhm.
inhabit, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, and I get the sense that, and I want you to definitely, co-sign or
Mhm.
add your 2 cents here, that understanding the significance of the wonder of God is the reason why you have to double the number of women who sustainably scale. Yes?
Yeah, and it's interesting because 'cause I've never thought about it in that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never connected the dots in the way that you just have consciously,
Mhm.
but I definitely have done it unconsciously.
Yeah.
Because and that's the only way that I can explain just this burning visceral, like, it's a very much, for me, fulfilling this mission is like a fire in the belly. It's
Mhm.
like this internal burn energy in the best way possible to accomplish this and to create this, because I do believe that it's um, even when we think about what does it take to sustainably scale and maintain a business at seven figures? Because that's the other thing. Like, it's not just reaching it. It's, can
Right.
you sustainably maintain it? And that's, you
Absolutely.
can definitely hustle your way to seven figures, 100%. But it's like, can you sustainably stay there? And to me, it's about what happens when we become people who are capable of doing this,
Mhm.
the power that we have, the role models that we can become, what we're able to inspire in other people, and also the internal work. So, for instance, this connection to wonder and staying in this place and maintaining my connection to this wonder to God and being able to continuously just sort of express that through my work and my mission, that's the joy and that's the real payoff. So the money is great, but one thing I have realized is more money doesn't make you happier.
Right.
It for me anyway, it definitely, like, it's great to be able to afford things and to be able to, have, and certainly up to a certain point it 100%, 1,000,000% makes you happier.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know?
But eventually it's like, okay, what else is there? I got the shoes, we live in the house, I drive the car, we have the
Right?
vacation home, we can do
Yeah.
this, we can do that. What else? There's got to be more impact, right? There's got to be something else that we can do with
Yes.
this money, right? I say all the time, it's hard to be the change when you don't have any. So we need it and we need a lot, right? And I
Yes.
also agree that seven figures is the floor. Like I don't want to
Mhm.
discount. I probably say this often on the show. I don't want to discount you getting to six figures. But can we be all the way real
Yeah.
and recognize that 100,000, 200,000, 300,000? I'm going to even go so far as to say up to about a $500,000 is not enough. It's not
Nope.
enough.
No.
And I think the sooner we as women are comfortable owning that, like just
Yeah.
trying it on to see if it fits,
Yes.
then we will, in that instant, Eleanor, this is what I think. In that instant, we will create capacity for more to flow in.
Yes, because, and I've been thinking about this recently, because I think to be comfortable with that, to be comfortable saying 500,000 isn't enough.
Mhm,
And I'm going to say that, I'm going to own that, and I am going to strive for more.
mhm.
I'm going to create more. I'm going to be a woman who has more, who can receive more. There's something about that that I think also requires you to, the word that's coming through to me is like to stand in your majesty,
Mhm.
and to stand in the full light of the skills you were given, the gifts you were bestowed with, the life experiences you have overcome, the lessons that you represent, to really fully stand in that and be seen, in that. And I think for me, that's always been actually the thing that I have found most challenging
Mhm.
in terms of building wealth and growing my business is the willingness to be seen in that, in my majesty, you
Yeah.
know?
Everything you said, that's the thing that I wrote down and underlined
Yeah,
because I think that's exactly it.
yeah,
I think that if we are honest, and everyone listening to this episode right now, this is your point of being honest. This would be the perfect moment if you haven't done so already to grab your Move to Millions podcast notebook. And I want you to honestly write down the number that you want. We all know the number, Eleanor, but we are so afraid to say it out loud.
yes,
We are so afraid because of what we think people will think of us and who we will instantly have to morph into becoming if we take possession of that number. And what I want to share with everyone right now, and I want to hear what you would offer to them as well, is the number won't show up until you can own it and detach from it.
yes,
Like, I am not my money. It is not my identity. Do I have a lot of it? Absolutely. Eight-figure net worth, boldly, proudly, because I used to be bankrupt, right? And
mhm,
today I can say it, and I say it as often as I can to disrupt and to create space for people to do the same thing in their lives. I will never stop talking about money. And I hope I make you so uncomfortable that you decide that the saying is if you can't beat them, join them. You
yes,
decide, you know what? I can't shake this feeling. I need to figure out how to be like Darnyelle and say, I want this amount of money. I'm going to do this with my money and say it with my chest,
yeah,
without equivocation, without stuttering, without stammering, without creating a diversion. right? Like,
So powerful.
so to
Yeah.
so to
Yes.
so I want you to unpack for us as vulnerable and transparent as you're willing to be,
Yeah.
because there was definitely a time in my life where I felt the same way, to be seen in your
Yeah.
majesty,
Yeah.
fully understanding what that means. Why do you think it's a
Mm.
struggle for you?
Yeah. So, and I have thought about this a lot and done so much work around it. And so let me I'll kind of walk you through what would
Okay.
happen and what I still, and it's still something that I work with to this day.
Okay.
So, what would happen is, when you're on a path and it's a path that's going to take everything that you are and more, you know? So it's just like in the iconic hero's journey, the hero has the call, and they go out and they encounter one obstacle and then the next, and each obstacle is a little bit bigger than the hero themselves. And so
Yeah.
the hero has to reach and dig deep and reach high and become a much bigger, more fully expressed version of themselves in order to overcome that obstacle. Then there's the next, and there's the next. So we are on this mission, and for those of us listening to the business, it's about all we know is we feel this calling to be, do, achieve, and create more.
Mhm.
And it's abundance. And so that is this call. It's very important to us. We know that it's not all just about the money, it's also about who we become. And we also know this is hard. Like, this is not easy. This stuff is hard. And so we're
If it
on
was
the path.
easy, everyone would be doing it.
The competition would be intolerable,
Yeah.
right? And so it's just, yeah, so you're on this path. And if you have you ever been in a situation where things really start going well and they're working, and then you notice you get distracted?
Mhm.
And what I would notice is that sometimes it was a thing. It was a person who suddenly started being a little bit nasty. But I would also notice that I would start maybe projecting things or projecting my insecurities or starting to feel worried or starting to feel that people would think I was too big for my britches or
Yeah.
thinking that if I do this now, people are going to come and start asking me for money. Like I would just find, and what happened is I would start to engage. It was my fear of being seen that would pull me to engage in behaviors that are like the drama, you know what I mean? Like human drama, which is just so attractive. It's why we gossip. We wanna know about. So I'd start to see this happening, and it was really difficult, and one of the things that I started to what changed for me was when I started to work regularly with forgiveness.
Mhm.
Because what I found was, it was like these little slights, insults, bothersome things, they would just kind of add up, and if I didn't process them, they became this baggage that I had,
Mhm.
and unless I forgave myself, forgave others, just practiced forgiveness, what that allowed me to do was to release the sense that I was responsible for how people thought about me, that I was responsible for their behaviors. I'm an oldest kid, you know,
Mhm.
just, releasing all of this stuff. And that became very, very important to me in my journey, because what I realized is, personally for me, I could master that, every new person that came into my life, and abundance generally comes in the form of other people,
Mhm.
like that's often
Mhm.
how it's expressed. Every person that came into my life became somebody I would either let down or who would disappoint me or who would turn on me.
Mhm.
So this was, and if you'd asked me how I was doing, I'd be fine. But this was a little bit of an undercurrent. And it's difficult to kind of reach for the next level and reach to the sky and keep your hand,
Yeah.
on a weight, on an anchor. You can't
Yeah.
do both of those things at the same time. You got to let the anchor go.
Yeah,
So,
it's like driving the car with your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, like, you're
yeah.
you're not going anywhere fast, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and I love that you brought it back to forgiveness. That is always, for me, when I'm working with clients,
Mm,
it is the one area that if I can get them to release the person, sometimes themselves, from the obligation of still being held to that mistake, that decision, if I can get them to do that, it literally turns the faucet on for money to start flowing.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yes.
I mean, I wrote about it in my book. I have a whole chapter, Move to Millions Forgiveness, and we talk about the fact that forgiveness releases the flow of your funds. Like, and I'm gonna tell I've
I
my
didn't know
listeners
that.
have
I
heard
didn't know that
me.
was in your book. Yeah.
Yeah, they have heard me say this a lot. So this might be new for you if you haven't listened to this particular episode. But in the Bible, the story that I tell, because everything that I teach can be backed by the Bible, right? So in the Bible, in Mark, it's actually in all four of the epistles, the disciples and Jesus are walking to whatever town they're going to. I think they're going to Bethany.
Mhm.
Jesus sees the fig tree. He wants a fig Newton. This is the Darnyelle version. He wants a fig Newton. The tree is not producing, so he curses the tree and they keep walking. Well, the next day they're walking back from Bethany to wherever they were going, and the disciples see the fig tree all curled up and dead. And they cannot believe that the power of the words that Jesus spoke killed the tree. Jesus recognizes that this is a teachable moment. So he stops and he turns around and he faces the disciples and he tells them, you can tell any mountain to move, and it will under four conditions. If you believe, you don't doubt, you speak to a mountain, and you forgive your brother. So any mountain, the mountain of debt, the mountain of finance, the mountain of relationship, any mountain, you can have it move if you believe that it's possible, if you don't doubt that it's possible, if you speak what it is that you desire, and you usher forgiveness. It is
Oh,
it is foundational to your ability to be able to. It's why my work, Eleanor, I mean, I spend a lot of time, I'm a business strategist. I love
yeah.
strategy, but I
Yeah.
spend a lot more of my time helping my clients unearth the things that are in the way so that the strategy they already have can actually work for them. And forgiveness is hard. No one wants to do it because they'd much rather hold that person to that thing. And we have to remind people that forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. And I always say, don't call the person and tell them you forgive them,
Yeah.
because
You
they're
don't
all
have
they're
to
going to
do
do is
that.
piss you off, right? They're going to piss you off all over again, right? But I literally, in tandem, like when a person becomes a client, we give them a copy of Forgiving Forward, which is a book by Bruce and Tony Hebel. It's a game-changing book on forgiveness. And
Okay, I have goosebumps now because I didn't so I know that story. I mean, it's
Mhm,
obviously like I know that story from the Bible, but I missed that part
mhm,
about forgiveness. And I actually didn't realize, like, I am a huge fan of you, but didn't realize the degree to which forgiveness is woven into
mhm,
what the work that you do. And here's the thing, like, we're having a conversation and talking about things in ways that I almost never talk about,
mhm.
And so, yeah. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. But it's true. I also think there's an energy of forgiveness and going through, like there's the sort of deep poignancy. It's like a sharp knife.
Yeah.
When you re-experience the situation, the emotion of the situation, when you connect to the emotion of the situation that you're trying to forgive either yourself or others for, it's bittersweet. You are so deeply connected to the human experience in that moment. And then as you begin to release it, there is that sense of wonder.
Yeah.
It is that sense of wonder, which is really powerful. And there's a major energetic flow that
Oh,
happens around
absolutely.
that.
And
Yeah.
what I love about what you just shared as I unpack it, because I don't know that I ever internalized it the way you just said it, but you're right. Like you have to relive all the emotion again of what it was. It's almost as if you have to go back to the place that you were when they wronged you, when you wronged yourself, in order to truly release. And let me tell you how this just showed up for me. I run, based on Bruce and Tony Hebel's book, The Forgiveness Protocol. I run it every Sunday, Eleanor, every Sunday, because I don't want anything to separate me from the abundance that has already been earmarked and reserved for me. And I know that unforgiveness is one of the things that will separate you from abundance. So I literally every Sunday I grab my journal and I sit and I go through the protocol, like, who do I need to forgive and why? Here's the bookmark. Just so you, just so you know,
Mm.
like it's on a bookmark. We give every client a copy of the book and the bookmark so that they have it. It's literally right here, right? So I do this every Sunday. And there have been times where I have not gone back to the experience. Here's the story. So there is a person in my life that I had to run through the protocol for a full year before I could release it. And I never put two and two together until you just said it. And the hairs on my arm stood up again. When I finally was able to release it, I went back and I emoted based on how I felt at the time that she did what she did to me. And then all of a sudden, I could check my body because I'm really big into our cellular memory and the lack that is locked in our bodies. I literally could go back to my body and say, I forgive, insert her name for insert what she did and not feel it anywhere. But
Oh.
it wasn't until I actually went through the emotion. It was like a sheet of paper that I just had all the names written down. And I was getting to the point where instead of doing the exercise, I was crossing the exercise off my list as having been done. And there is a difference.
And until you can really face it, because when we feel injured or hurt, and there's varying scales to it, but
Yeah.
if you feel really injured or hurt by somebody, and it is especially as a strong woman, because to me that confronts how we identify and how we see ourselves as a strong person,
Yeah.
that this should not impact, or that we're stronger than this, we're better than this. And I personally have experienced this. I don't feel that anybody should be able to hurt me. I'm annoyed that anybody would have that kind of power to hurt me or injure me in some way. I find it distasteful. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And so, because I dislike it so much, when we don't want to experience it, it has a power over us that doesn't actually allow us to be much more open to a much greater power, the
Yeah.
power of our vision, the power of our purpose, our birthright,
Yeah.
and so it is like leadership takes so much humility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
so I think to forgive, you have to be so humble, because you have to, well, in my experience, you have to accept that somebody had the power to throw you off your course, to hurt you, to bother you, that it did bother you. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I'm just like, no, it didn't. I
Right.
don't care. I'm fine. It didn't hurt me at all, and that, which is like,
Which is disingenuous.
totally.
Right. And it's like you're out of integrity with yourself. And then you're trying to figure out why things aren't moving, things aren't working. Because you're
Yeah.
out of alignment, right? Because I define alignment as seeing yourself the way that God sees you.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah. So whenever you are not in the state as anytime you talk bad about yourself, anytime you talk down to yourself, you are out of alignment. You are not seeing yourself the way that God sees you, because in God's eyes, you are his prized creation,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so whenever we're out of alignment, and a quick way to tell if you're out of alignment, if you make an I am statement and then you change I am to God is and it no longer makes sense, you're out of alignment, right? So I am broke. We know I don't say that anymore, but we know people say that all the time. And then you say God is broke. Yeah, that doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. How can
Yeah.
he be broke,
Right.
right? So you're out of alignment. You are not seeing yourself the way God sees you, because Genesis 1 and 26, before he even created Adam and then eventually Eve, he said, let us make man in our image and likeness. Let us give him power over the earth to dominate and to call everything under his subjection. That's who we are. So that means we're technically gods of the earth. And so if I'm ever not acting like representing myself as a god, or not as a god of the earth, then I'm out of alignment with the way that God sees me. Right? In Jeremiah, one of my favorite scriptures, before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew you and
Mm.
approved you and called you prophet. He gave you a message to share with the nations. That's that wonder of purpose and potential and promise and vision and mission that you talked about, right? It's
Yeah.
all biblically based. It's the foundations of the earth. And so whenever we step outside of that, we're out of alignment, and it is hard. It is challenging. It's probably impossible to forgive when you're out of alignment.
Yeah. And
That's why
when you're separate from that state of wonder, and the state of wonder, you can't necessarily experiencing it in your head, you have to experience it in your body.
in your emotion, like
Yeah.
that's why it just blew my mind,
Yeah.
because I never, in all of my studies, I never connected that until you said it, but it immediately created a trigger point for me in a good
Yeah.
way, that that's the thing. Because as
Yeah.
women, we're trying to downplay and dismiss and squash our feelings because we're not giving anyone that power over us. But what we actually need to do, what I feel like I'm hearing you say, and I completely agree with, is that we have to be willing to be vulnerable and transparent and honest that it hurt us. And it
Yeah.
hurt us to the point of tears. It hurt us to the point of questioning who we are, questioning our value and our worth, questioning whether or not we can actually accomplish with maybe consciously we believe it's possible. But this thing that happened subconsciously has put a dent in our armor. We don't know if we can get back up to fight another fight.
And also, it's this knowledge that we are many. So, if I think about myself today, there's myself, I'm 46, the 46-year-old CEO, who's been through, who has a lot of experiences, who's a great communicator, who has dealt with things and just has a lot of skills and foresight and things to bring to bear. But there's also the version of me there's also a part of me that's still a 6-year-old girl who's
Mhm.
still, so we are the sum of all of the, all of the different stages that we've been through.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we see ourselves in a very singular way, which is just the exact person we are today, when in fact, I think there are lots of different expressions, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
of who we are that could come out based on coping mechanisms and all of that stuff that, is that some people are certainly experts in. But to your point, I think that when we talk about sustainably scaling, a lot of times you look at that from a business strategy perspective, and that's real. Like that's
Mhm.
absolutely real. But there's also a part in terms of what we're bringing. And so I think what the forgiveness does, because we have to go back, we have to go back to that moment and we have to reconnect with a version of ourselves who experienced that harm.
Mhm.
And we have to honor that part of ourselves. And we have to give that part of ourselves some airtime and allow that version to express itself and to be present in that moment with us. So it's like you're witnessing yourself, go through
Mhm.
it. And that to me is wholeness.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sustainably scale in business when you're not operating from a place of wholeness, when you're just allowing certain parts of yourself to be running the show and you're spending a lot of energy suppressing other parts of yourself. And, I think this is a big piece of work. And I think it's why the work that we do, we see what happens when you run businesses and lead and make decisions that impact thousands of people. We've seen
Yeah.
how that happens when you don't operate from a place of wholeness.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're bringing. It's really what we're bringing to the conversation.
I love that. And it's so important, right? I think if it were just strategy, everyone would be doing it, right? Like you can go right now and Google everybody's strategy and all the strategies work. So if it's not
Yeah,
working for you, it clearly must be more than strategy,
yeah,
right? And I think the recognition for you of helping the women that you serve operate in wholeness, for me, like I expanded our Move to Millions method this year. So I wrote the book based on the
yeah,
method, 5 S's: strategy, sales, system, support, success mindset. And then I realized that success mindset really ran way deeper than I talked
mm,
about in the book. And so we expanded success mindset out into 3. So we have success mindset, we have spirituality, we have self-care. And
mm,
across those 3, we get to cover all of the things. So, your growth mindset, your money mindset. We get to cover forgiveness, unforgiveness, surrender, alignment, significance, confidence, right? I think, confidence is believing that God was right to create you.
Mm.
Significance is you no longer feel the need to validate that God was right to create you.
Oh yeah.
So it's
I've
the
been
next
there.
level, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah, yeah, and it's and your significance isn't contingent upon anyone else. Like, you don't need anyone else
yes.
to co-sign or pat you on the back and say, "Eleanor, you rock. You did it, girl. I'm so proud of you." You're proud of yourself. And
Yeah.
you can be proud of yourself because I also believe that humility is being confident enough to operate fully in your gifts. I don't think humility
Yes.
is downplaying or dismissing who
No.
you are, because
No.
your gift will make room for you and others, and you don't have to downplay anyone else in order to be seen as gifted. And that is
Yeah,
humility.
I think humble, not modest.
Yeah.
Like modesty, I just who even cares? Like it's
Yeah.
not useful. It really isn't. Humility is really powerful. There's a
Oh, it
huge
is,
force of power
especially
there.
as a leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that there's
totally.
definitely a confidence in humility. And most
Yeah.
people think it's the opposite, right? Like it's you're
Yes.
saying that you don't need to be out there with it when actually you do. But anyway, that's probably another
I've got a
episode.
question for you. I'm curious
Yeah.
what you think about this though, because I think what you're talking about, like this idea of validating. And I've definitely heard you talk about this, and I've done this myself, where sometimes in earlier versions of earlier parts of our story, a lot of, well, for me, I'll speak for myself. I think I've heard you say this, that some of that success was driven by a need to validate.
Oh, honey,
Okay.
100% of it
Right?
was.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so even
Yes.
even for me, becoming a seven-figure business at first was about everybody else and not about me. It was like,
Yes.
because and here, I don't know if you know this about my backstory, but my mom was getting high when she was carrying me. She didn't know I was there, in her defense.
Mhm. Yep.
When she learned I was there, she stopped. But this is 1975, where we're now starting to see studies that you shouldn't smoke. And so the
Yes.
doctors had no idea what the impact was going to be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to learn about this. And then at 8, during my birthday party, my mom's home is raided and she's taken to jail. So your girl has significant abandonment issues, like
Yeah.
significant, right? And
Yes.
so I always felt like I had to achieve in order to prove that I deserved to be here. And
Mm.
so most of it was external. It was so that someone else could pat me on the back and say, "You're great." And
Yes.
not that I believed I was great. Like deep down inside, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't think I deserve it. It's why I can recognize it, right? We say game recognizes
Yes.
game. I
Yeah.
can recognize it because I used to be that, right? But that, so yes, 100% of my success, probably until the age of 38, was for someone else.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, so I was listening to, sometimes when I get pissed off and I want to tell someone off, I'll just go listen to the Dr. Laura podcast.
Oh,
She's really great at telling
it's
people
really
off.
great.
She's really masterful at it. And so then it just, you know what I mean? It lets me get in touch with my feeling of telling someone off without having to tell them off.
Yeah.
Um, but what was interesting, and I noticed, I think she's in her 80s now. So she's
Mhm.
been in this game a long time. And there's
Yeah.
something about longevity and longevity of human development work. People have all kinds of opinions on Dr. Laura. This isn't about whether we love Dr. Laura or not,
Right.
but it's about a point that she made. And so she was looking at there was a young woman who was doing something like, she got herself into trouble because of something related to immaturity and needing to validate herself and not feeling worthy and all of this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And in today's age, we look at that and we understand it's a problem, but we're also like, oh, we need to fix that in people earlier. We need to fix that in people earlier. And what Dr. Laura was pointing out was that's how it is. That's a part of the maturation process.
Mhm.
It's a rite of passage that is like very old, whereas humans, we're born, we get separated from that wonder and that power, and we have to
Mhm.
find our way back to it. And part of the separation is forgetting that we have all of that this is our birthright, that this is our,
Yeah.
forgetting that underlying worthiness is there. And it's always about a journey back to it. And so the question that I had for you is, do you think we sort of turn that rite of passage is it a rite of passage that people just have to go through, and it's a normal part of the maturation process to go from feeling like you need to validate and prove your worth, and you arrive there and you realize I never had to do this in the beginning?
Mhm.
Or is it something that we can just bypass people from, or that we should expect we can just bypass people right through without ever having to have made that mistake?
No, I think that if we attempt to bypass people through, we will stunt their growth.
Yeah.
I think, and here's what I know. So I've worked with women, primarily women. We have some male clients. Usually my male clients are my private clients, which is weird. I
Yeah.
guess they don't,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But what I've had some people who come from amazing backgrounds and families where they're told every single day, you can do anything you want. You're great, you're beautiful, you're talented. And I've had people who were told you're going to be just like your no good insert family member, right?
Yeah.
And what I find is that it doesn't matter if you come from an environment where you've been built up every single day by someone else. If you don't feel it yourself, it's a problem, because most of the people I know that came from families that are just told they can do anything that they put their mind to and they'll be great at it. When they mess up, that's not the story that they get. What they get is, oh my, how could you? You did it. Like they're all of a sudden wrong when a minute ago they could do anything and no matter what they did, they'd be great at it. Right. And so it's that dichotomy of a mixed message that
Yeah.
just like forgiveness, we both now know because of your example, has to be internalized. So does the walk of validation. Because I can tell you all day long, you deserve to be here, Eleanor. You're amazing. But if there is anything in you because of the way that you have navigated through life that does not hold that belief, it's just the same as if I give you a statement and part of it is false and that makes the whole statement false. It's the same exact thing. It invalidates the whole thing because you don't hold the belief for yourself. And the only way I believe, so I agree with you and with Dr. Laura, that we can come to the place where we can stand boldly and flat-footed in the confidence and significance of who we are without feeling the need to apologize or downplay or dismiss our greatness, as if we have walked a journey in shoes that have holes in them across glass and fire to self validate that we deserve to be here. I would be a fraction of the meaning of my name, which is the secret place where dreamers go to dream, had I not experienced being abandoned on multiple occasions, because we could talk about some ex-fiancés who did some whack things to me. If I hadn't filed bankruptcy, if I hadn't lost it all and found a way in myself to understand that I am worthy of it all and gain it all back in a short period of time, you wouldn't even want to listen to anything I had to say. Now let me ask you a question about the question you asked me, right? So you're at a conference and a speaker takes the stage and they are gorgeous. I mean, you in your best day, if you could look and glide across the stage like they do, then you would be it, right? And they stand up there and they tell their story, and their story is, I was born rich. I've never experienced anything. I've always had it this way. When I set my mind to something, it happens just like that. I've never failed. Everything I've ever touched turned to gold. Are you on the edge of your seat leaning in to see what success clues they have for you, or are you scrolling on your phone?
Yeah, yeah. When I was putting myself in that situation as you were explaining that, and absolutely, I'm engaging at a very superficial level
Yeah.
with what they're saying. I'm probably engaging with how good they look, or how
Right.
well they're presented, or how well they're. And it's interesting because I do think it points to this idea that self-respect is something that has to be earned. So worthiness is always there. So what I'm hearing in this conversation is there's a difference between worthiness, which is inherent,
Hmm.
and self-respect. And self-respect is the path back to our knowledge of our worthiness. Like
I love
babies are
that.
born believing they're 100% worthy. It's this process of distance and then reuniting,
Right.
with that power. And
Yeah.
I do think that self-respect is the journey back to that state of worthiness. And sometimes that's my problem sometimes with what we see in the personal development movement when
Mhm.
people are like, you should just love yourself, just sit there and love yourself. And it's not that I disagree, but it's like,
It's not
but
that simple.
it's not that simple. You
Yeah.
have to earn your own respect, just like
Yeah.
other people have to earn respect. And we do it through showing up for ourselves, walking that difficult path, coming back from challenges, or perhaps people are listening who are that person who's had it very easy. And they're like, well, where do I fit in this? There is something to be said for consistency and discipline
Yeah.
and actually leveraging those gifts that you've been given and
Mhm.
finding purpose, the difficult path to uncovering purpose, through
Yeah.
that path. So yeah, ooh, there's something there that self-respect is the path back to
I love
worthiness.
that. I think
Yeah,
that you should continue to pull on that because I
yeah,
I agree with you. And the way that we help women, because we have a similar mission. I don't know
yeah.
if I've categorically defined mine as doubling it by a certain time period.
Mhm.
But the way that we do that is we're actually, Eleanor, we are not purveyors of business growth strategy. We are purveyors of creating a safe, significant, and aligned space for women to find the respect for themselves that takes them back to their inherent worthiness. That is so beautiful. And yeah, like
Yeah,
I think that that's the answer. Like, because if we drill down to what it means to scale, right? And statistically, 78% of people who have done seven figures never do it again. They become one hit wonders, right?
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so 78%
Oh,
never
that's a
do it
good one.
again.
Yeah,
So because you can do it, and to your point earlier, most will burn out before they cash out because they're doing it the hustle way because that's what we're taught, right?
yeah.
I know in my house I was told all the time you have to work hard for money. Were you told you have to work hard for money too?
What I was told is you need to manage it extremely wisely.
Okay.
So so it was working hard, but it was all the hardness was in the managing and the being
Okay.
careful and the living well below your means. It just felt
Gotcha.
quite gray and drudgy.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like living in unworthiness.
Yes.
If you're living beneath your means, then yeah, okay, that could take us down a whole nother
Right?
little
Oh,
tangent, right?
yeah.
And
Totally.
so if that is what we are taught, then we have to get to a place where we reconcile with that. And the answer is being able to see yourself the way God sees you.
Yeah.
You have to see yourself the way God, because God already sees you that way. And until you see yourself that way, all bets are off. And it's going to be challenging. So if you do it once and you do it with hustle, you probably won't want to do it again
No.
because it was way harder. It was way harder than it was worth when it was all said and done. That is how I felt the very first time. So 2014 was my first seven-figure year. It literally happened in 3 days at my live event, and
Mm.
I immediately hated it. Once the dust settled, I didn't have capacity for the number of clients we enrolled. And so I made some really poor decisions. Like the whole history of me and money,
Mm.
like, was poor decisions. And so I made some poor decisions. I hired some people who basically, I don't think they did it intentionally, but they were killing my company.
Yeah.
I had a really good paying job, but I couldn't even enjoy it because I was tired, because I didn't have the right systems and infrastructure. Like literally everything that I teach in my Move to Millions method is what I did wrong to get to
Yeah.
seven figures. And I was willing to detach from the outcome of seven figures because I thought I'd get there and all of a sudden I'd be worthy in everyone else's eyes. And it didn't happen. And so I was willing to abandon it all to go do my work to figure out how to recreate a business that made seven figures that I could sustain and that I could do it while building a business that served me both financially and spiritually. So I wouldn't have to hustle. I wouldn't have to grind. I wouldn't have to sacrifice what I deem to be important to myself. Like I would be able to do it in a way that really does honor me. And it took me about 18 months to do it again and to get back to the $1 million mark. Um, 2016, or no, it took me longer, almost two years, 24 months or so,
Mhm.
because 2015, 2016, we did millions. 2016, like 600,000. 2017 started to come back up. 2018 closer. 2019 was $1 million year. So
Yeah.
about 3 years organizationally was the
Yeah.
difference. But the changes started showing up 18 to 24 months later, what I had put in
Well,
place.
well, and what's so interesting is what you're describing is the classic heroine's journey. So,
Mhm.
in the hero's journey, the hero, like we've got lots of examples of, he feels the call, he goes out, he goes, past one hurdle than the other we've talked about earlier, and
Yeah.
ultimately he surpasses the biggest hurdle and gets what he wants or what he needs.
Mhm.
And they're often both the same. It depends on
Yeah.
is it a tragedy or is it a, or is it an uplifting story? But the heroine's journey is really interesting because at the point where she overcomes that last big challenge,
Mhm.
that's where the hero's journey and the heroine's journey diverge. So in your case, and I have a very similar experience, like we're out, we're going to get that $1 million business to prove to ourselves,
To prove it
and
to
while
others,
we're
not
earning
even
our,
prove to me, prove to
oh
others.
yeah, yeah, like
It's
I'm
all about
worthy.
everybody
Exactly.
else.
That's right. That's right. So we go out and get it. And you're in the middle of a classic heroine's journey where you get the thing that you wanted. And it's such a woman experience that or shared by so many women. And we look around, we're like, what?
Right. Yeah.
This is it? Are you
I could have had a
serious?
V8.
Right? Yeah. Like I honestly, and I personally went into a bit of a depression. And
Me
what you
too.
classically see is that's where the woman, if she's listening to herself, they call it a dark descent. It's the descent into her. It's a
Mhm.
descent into, it's very much an internal journey where then she recreates, or she recrafts a different version of success that
Yeah.
is anchored in who she is, that's anchored in an internal vision of success versus like an external one. So it's
Yeah.
really, really fascinating. And I love being able to talk about it because I had the same thing. I was quite depressed,
Mhm.
and not clinically, but I felt this sense of hopelessness because I invested so much in this belief that when I crossed this mark, I would feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh no, it's not that. You are still the same person, my
You
friend.
are. You just got
You
more
know,
money and more
you just have more
problems.
money and more problems. You know what I mean? And so now you've got to, and that has been such the joy of, that's I think where creation and business become very joyful because you get to create something that feels meaningful and feels
Yeah.
rich and feels like an expression of what it was that you wanted to create and you're here to create on the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. So good. This has
Yeah,
been
so good.
amazing. I cannot believe how fast the time is gone, but
Yeah.
we're not going to keep the people listening to us all day. So what
Listen,
I want to do is I do want to
even though
give you
you guys know
the
you loved it, you loved it. I
oh,
did. I hope
it's
they
been
did.
amazing. They're going to
It's
listen
so
like
good.
10 times. 10
Right?
times. Absolutely. Especially to go back and really unpack that self-respect piece. But I do want to give you the last word. If there's anything else you'd like to share, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you our 3 wisdom questions and we'll call it an episode. Anything else sitting on your heart, sitting in your spirit that you'd like to be able to share with our listeners?
I will go back to that self-respect. And to me, self-respect is being very, very intentional about your commitments and then being a woman who honors them.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, that's so good. Oh gosh, that is so good. Oh my gosh, that is so good.
Right? Because
We
how
can do a
often do
whole
we
other
dishonor
episode just on that
ourselves?
statement, Eleanor. That is
Right?
so good.
We
Oh,
dishonor ourselves, by making all of these commitments that we can't possibly, so we don't ever, we reduce the power of our word
yeah.
all the time through overcommitting. And, yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. All right, final 3 questions. Because we don't, I seldom do I talk business on my
Yeah.
podcast. So do we talk about business? So
Yeah.
we're going to anchor our conversation in some business tools for our
Do
listeners. So
it.
the 3 questions again is what's the one book, what's the one quote, and the one tool that has been instrumental on your move to millions?
Oh, okay. The one book would, oh, there's so many, but I would say one of the biggest books for me has been The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes.
Hmm.
Really good one.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
And quote, what quote has made a difference for you?
Um, it's a Warren Buffett quote.
Mhm.
When the tide goes out, you'll see who's been swimming naked.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one.
That's good. It's
I
very
like
much
that.
about staying in your lane, like stay focused on your thing. Don't get distracted. Stay focused on what it is that you're here to do, which is a big sort of undercurrent, I think, of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. And then what's the tool that's made a
Oh,
difference?
I'm going to share like a recent tool that I've been working with. And it's a time management. Like I actually took Megan Sumrell, her name is, it's a time management course. It's just this little course.
Mhm.
But it's been very effective in terms of helping me actually kind of get even better control over my schedule.
Okay.
So that's one I would recommend. I just found it quite useful. It combines really nicely with all kinds of strategic work that people are doing. So that's the tool.
Okay, nice. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
This has been phenomenal. I knew it was going to be. Anytime
Same.
I get to sit in your presence, we could just
Same.
go on and on and on and on for hours. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you shared. I know that our listeners are going to come back to this episode and that many of them will reach out to you. We'll put all of your information in the show notes so that they can connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing. Um, and I just want to say, just again, just thank you. Thank you so much for being Eleanor, for being present during this conversation, and for taking on the mantle of doubling the number of women who make seven figures by 2030. I honor you for the work that you do, and I'm so grateful to call you friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.